Boom! Live and direct with the 10th letter of the sacred mission. You may want to read this more slowly than my previous letters, but I invite you sincerely to read it nevertheless. If the currents of conduction pumping the negative electricity away from the Earth are variable depending on climate, season, hour, the degree of conductivity of the atmosphere, the eminently powerful and variable influence of other planets such as the Moon, the Sun, the multiple atmospheric conditions, the resistance of different soils, the number and the sharpness of different points that are presented, and many, many more. Then, the currents of conductivity sending the negative electric charges that go in the inverse direction, such as those drop on Earth during a storm, are also variable for many different reasons. Let me explain. The cumuli-nimbus clouds are not all equal in importance. I think I read that. Yeah. You can hereby deduct that the rain and sunny days are neither accident nor result of haphazardness. You can deduct that blue sky cannot be everywhere at once. If ever man, in his wills, manages to modify the climate of a particular region, he will automatically and forcibly modify, without actual intention, the climate of other areas, even if it be detrimental. The proper ecological condition required by nature for any commenced vegetation has its role, just as vegetation commands the electro-biological climate most desirable to its growth. The same as vegetation picks its local to grow in a perfect way, the area treats vegetation accordingly. It is not forbidden to think that clouds or other atmospheric conditions seek by natural affinity their proper area to function. These help to create the climate in a particular terrestrial environment that benefits them the most. This is controlled by the numbers, the type, and the diversity of the points accomplishing the sacred mission, and thereby bringing about a just equilibrium of electricity on Earth. Here is a good question. Does the climate dictate the vegetation, or on the contrary, does the vegetation dictate the climate? Does the vegetation dictate the climate? Good question. Being knowledgeable of the sacred mission. Being knowledgeable of the sacred mission facilitates reasoning out this answer. Isn't it so that in the least stormy areas, poor in cumuli-nimbus, the growth is the rarest? Is it not also true, on the contrary, that in regions where storms are more frequent, vegetation is the most lush, luxurious, vigorous, and biggest? The equatorial forests, some of which receive almost daily storms, gives us a great illustration of this truth, and the rainforest also. Here is the virgin forest where the trees and other plants, with all their points outstretched, grow with an extraordinary rapidity. The ascent of the sap is brought to its paroxysm, and the sacred mission is intensively accomplished all year round because of the absence of winter. In answer to the previous question as to whether climate dictates growth and whether growth climates dictate climate, or whether growth dictates climate, it seems that formal science leans to the former, we could be tempted by the second option. The following examples will hold your interest. After Napoleon III reforested the land region with pines, the weather changed. In other areas deforested by man, stupidly, weather conditions were detrimentally affected. In the first instance, man increases the point, and in the latter, he eliminated them. In the Sahara, due to artesian wells having been notably drilled into the underground currents of the Hound Rir, several oases have been developed. These oases are certainly artificial. One day when I was in the Sahara, which means without clouds, Sahara, I noticed a great cumulus nimbus hovering like a hat over a palm grove. This cumulus nimbus had immobilized itself because, tired of a long trip without meeting a port, it had finally found a multitude of leafy points exposed by the pond and the trees. These stretched out points were going to give it the opportunity to exchange a mass of negative electricity. The points were offering a chance for a payment of a debt to nature. An abundant rainfall resulted onto the oasis, while the rest of the desert did not receive a single drop. In the same order of things, in temperate climates during seasons such as winter, when all is denuded of leaves, leaving few points, stormy days are extremely rare. The southern hemisphere being in summer with many bearing leaves and point receives the opposite. It is clear that the opposite zones accomplish the opposite in charge and discharge on the earth. Seasons have an influence, but the harmony is always. 11th letter. It is important to tell you about humus, in case you did not know. In nature, plants take their food from the cosmos as well as from the earth. I will explain. The principal food from the ground is constituted from the fruit of the humus, a living source necessary for the nourishment of all growing elements through their roots. What is humus? A darkish vegetation earth covers the ground in the forest. It is also earth of cultivation if the fertilizer used are from organic manure, example, vegetable and animal. Humus is the result of decomposition of organic matter at a certain stage. In its natural medium, not modified by man. In the forest, for example, it is the product of the transformation of all the matter that falls dead to the ground. Leaves, wood, garbage, dead bodies, excrement of animal, residue of vegetation, etc. This matter is still intact when it reaches the ground, goes immediately through a series of transformations due to the intervention of an infinite multitude of infinitely small animals, notably so-called aerobic bacteria, because they need air to survive. They have the mission to transform these organic matter into ammoniated elements, then nitrous, and finally nitric acid, a form of nitrogen that is absorbed by plants. These infinitely small bacteria and others work constantly so that plants may survive. This permits the survival of all things nourished by them. Very interesting. I'll be back.